Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to turn the tables on my co-host,
Here we
Kyle
go.
Holton.
There we
We're
go.
going to find out some stuff about you.
Oh, boy.
All right, this week you're going to learn about what Kyle Holton's all about. And so I'll start out with one you start out on with
Okay.
me, I think. And that is, where were you born?
I was actually born right here in Columbia, Lexington Medical Center, about
Columbia
15
boy.
minutes from here.
How did you and your wife, Rachel, meet? And was it love at first sight?
So which side of the story do I want to tell? Actually,
She's going to be watching me.
Rachel and I met when I was a student at Clemson University. I was there for 1 year, but I can still say that I went there. And she actually saw me from across the room before we had ever spoken. And she'll tell you the story. And she said before we had ever spoken,
Yeah.
I'm going to marry that boy right there.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. But then we actually ended up meeting at a devotional that was at her Uncle Skip's house. And we kind of started talking after that. And it pretty quickly became like a romantic relationship. And as they say, the rest is history.
So are you telling me for her it was love at first sight?
It was love at first sight for both of
both
us.
of you, okay.
But she knew it before she even talked to me. I used to have on my sunglasses, I had a retainer on the back, but this retainer had like one of those big, it was a fish bobber. So it was like if you dropped your sunglasses in the water while you were
I know what you're
fishing,
talking about.
then they wouldn't. Big yellow thing.
Yeah.
And she used to make fun of that big, honking bobber on the back of my neck. But she's still the one who said, I'm going to marry that boy before she ever even
That's
talked to me.
pretty cool. I love
pretty
that.
good.
I love
pretty
that.
good.
Well, it looks like it resulted some kids as well. How many kids you have, and which one is most like you?
Ooh, man. All right. So we have 3 kids, Aslan, Emmy, and Ellery. Aslan is 6. Emmy is 2, almost 3, and Ellery just turned 1 in April. Most like me. Aslan is probably the most like me. And I'll say because he's like my little mini me. If you look at pictures of me when I was his age, identical.
Yeah.
But he and I have similar personalities. Ellery, she's still young enough to where she's got a lot of sass going on.
Yeah.
Emmy is our adopted daughter.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating seeing the mixture of her personalities from her birth parents. And also the personalities that she's kind of picking up from us.
She's a sweetheart.
So that's been a really fun experience. But yeah, probably Aslan. Aslan's probably the most like me.
Cool. All right. Next question.
Okay.
What was the most surprising thing when you started into ministry, when you started full-time? Biggest surprise? Maybe something you didn't know, or maybe it was a misconception about ministry. What's the biggest surprise?
I could go a couple different ways with this. So when I first started full-time ministry, it was 2016. It was the Forsyth Church of Christ in Monroe, Louisiana.
Know the congregation well.
John Dobbs, one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met in my life. Hey, John, hopefully you're watching this.
Yeah.
And I think when I got there, I thought, I don't want to say I thought ministry was going to be easy, but I thought I knew everything that I needed to know, as you do when you're 21 or 22.
Sure.
And I thought going in, like, I got this thing figured out. I'd done some internships. I'd done some apprenticeships. I'd done during the school ministry, summer ministry, all of the stuff. I was like, I got this thing. I knew my style. I knew how I wanted to do it. And very quickly realized, dude, there is so much you don't have a clue about. There's so much you still have to learn. And I am learning that on a regular basis now
Every
that
day. Yeah.
even though I've been in it for 6 or 7 years full time now, and going on 10, including part time work. But like we talked about last week, like there's always this misconception that ministers are that they're on a pedestal, that they're like some kind of special person just because you wear this title. But like, we're real people, and we mess up in our jobs too. We make mistakes too. We run late. We do all kind of stuff. Yeah. And that was one thing from the very beginning that John always he gave a lot of grace, and he gave me a lot of room to grow. He trusted me with a lot more than I thought anybody ever would with a 21-year-old, 22-year-old.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were some really formative days for me.
That's
I really
cool. You had a
enjoyed
good
those
church
days.
to begin with.
It
That's really
was
important too.
a really
a lot of
special
guys
spot.
get out of ministry soon because their first church really
That's very
burns
true.
them.
That's very true.
So you had a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see. The next question here is, this one you asked me.
Okay.
All right. What's one book other than the Bible that you think everybody should read? Everyone should read.
Okay, I'm going to go back to a book that I actually read every single year. It's entitled "In the Name of Jesus" by Henry Nouwen. And I have gone back. I try to read this book about once a year, kind of early in the year to kind of start my year off. And in it, Henry Nouwen talks about these 3 lies that we're all tempted to believe and the ways that they manifest themselves. And I'm actually teaching a class with our students right now about, it's called Befriending Your Monsters, by another book called Befriending Your Monsters by Luke Norsworthy. Everybody should read that one too. But it's about identity. It's about learning who you really are in ministry. And through it, he tells this story about how he learned a whole lot from somebody he never thought he would learn from. So yeah, and it's a nice short book. It's like 75 to 100 pages. It's a really easy read. Anybody could pick it up and read it in a day or two. Just a great book.
If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 luxury items would you most want to have with you? 3 luxury items.
Ooh, luxury. So how do you define luxury?
I don't know. That's something for you to define.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So I'm going to think, when I think luxury, I'm going to say for most people, they're not necessities.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe you don't need it for survival. How about that?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say there has to be coffee somewhere in this mix.
I knew that was coming.
What do you think that I'm drinking right now?
Now,
I would call the coffee that I'm drinking today, Loveland coffee. I'm going to call that a luxury item, like this in particular. So if I can have like a lifetime supply, that'd be great. Travis, if we can like work that out, let me know. So coffee's got to be there. Luxury item number 2. Oh geez, this is actually a harder question than I thought it was going to be.
I know it is.
Things that I would want to bring with me to a desert island. How long am I on this desert island? Like forever? Like
from now on.
I'm
from
stuck
now on.
there.
You're there, stuck there from now on.
I'm gonna say luxury item. I need exercise equipment. Like I need some weights. I need something to move my body a bit. And I have a feeling that regardless of how long I was stuck on a desert island, I would need to keep physically fit. And yet, most people would probably just be like, I'm gonna climb a tree and run around. I need to do something legitimate.
See, I would just let myself go.
Oh nah, man. This is your opportunity.
There's nobody there. You don't.
I'm cool with that. And then I'm gonna say a luxury item that most people would not have on a desert island: a good bed.
A good bed.
Because I don't want to sleep. I don't want, maybe even like a tiny home. Like if we can just transplant a tiny home, if you can call that a luxury item. That has everything that I need in there. See,
an
now
entire home with everything. You
now
need.
it's just an island that I own.
I think you're cheating. Yeah.
Hey, it's my answer to the question. I get to decide how I answer. Look at this.
Here's another one. If you could spend one day doing absolutely anything, a whole day, absolutely anything, what would it be?
So is this like I get to pick one activity for the whole day?
You pick anything you want to do for one day, absolutely anything.
Oh man, my ideal day.
What would you do?
Most people would say they'd sleep in. I would not. I would wake up nice and early in the morning. I would start the day with a walk on the beach. This is something I do every year when we go on vacation. I like to watch the sunrise. So I would definitely be doing that. There's just something about starting the day that way. I would have some nice quiet time to myself in the morning. I'm a pretty introverted person. And if I don't start the day like that, it doesn't typically go well for me throughout the day. So I need that like energy coming in the morning. And then honestly, if I could just spend the entire day hanging out with my kids, with no agenda. I think that's usually one of my biggest issues is like, I have really good intentions. I want to be a good dad. I want to be present for my kids and things like that. But then there's a running to-do list and there's always something else to do. Something's trying to vie for my attention. Something's trying to vie for my energy. Yeah. So if I could just like push all of that to the side for a bit and just say, nope, I'm here with these 3 little ones. I'm here with Rachel. And then just let the day happen. If we eat good food, that'd be great. If we drank some coffee, that'd be really great. But then we just hang out, we watch a movie together, we spend some time. So yeah, that'd be the ideal day on that one.
And those are the days you'll look back on when you're old and remember.
Yeah.
All right, last one.
Okay.
If you could rid the world of one evil, what would it be and why?
Golly, there are so many. There are so many things that I want to see disappear. And luckily, like I can spiritualize this for a second. Like I really lean in the hope and the confidence that one day all evil is going to be gotten rid of. But in the here and now, we see it a lot. I think if I could just get rid of all illness, all sickness, all disease, I mean, you know, there's a tendency in me that I want to say, let's get rid of all violence, because violence has never been actually the answer. The peace isn't the absence of violence. It's just, somebody said peace is when both sides are reloading. And I'm like, that's not peace. That's animosity.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I could get rid of cancer, if I could get rid of childhood cancer, if I could get rid of, anything that stands in the way of people flourishing in the way that God intended them to, enjoying their bodies the way God wanted them to, and not having to worry about going to the doctor. I mean, last night we were in class and I had a couple of students like, hey, will you pray for this person? You know, they're dealing with this. Hey, will you pray for this person? They're struggling with this. They've got a family member that's got this problem. And we just prayed and we told God, hey, we long for the day when we don't have to pray for people to not have cancer anymore. Because that's going to be a great day. Yeah. But if I could snap my fingers and make it all happen right now, I'd do it.
I would be for that. I'd be beautiful.
That'd be awesome.
Well, good answers, brother. Love it. Thank you. Thank you
for
sharing some of you with us. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I tried to get good ones for you there.
Yeah, there we go.
Today we want to talk about keeping our young people after they leave the church, because it's no secret that in many churches, when young people reach college age, sometimes they drop out of the church. Of course, there's some congregations do a really good job of maintaining and keeping their youth. Yeah. And so the question for today is, what helps to keep young people in church? And I know you've been talking a lot to your students. Kyle is a youth minister here at Palmetto Church, and I know you over the last several weeks you've been asking them, what can we do? What can the church do? What is it that helps keep our young people? So in your conversations with him, what are some of the main things that you have discovered when it comes to connecting with and reaching the next generation?
Yeah, this is kind of a follow-up from a conversation we had a couple weeks ago in our last episode. If you haven't listened to that one already, please feel free. You'll find all of the links that you need in the description or in the show notes if you're listening on audio. And last time we had this conversation, well, why is the church struggling? Like, why do we see the numbers over and over again? Like, you see boomers, Gen X that are staying in church. They're engaging with church. They're attending church, all the things. And then you hit millennials and Gen Z, and it's just like there's this rise of what the Barna Group and what others have called the nuns.
And let me say this while you're saying that, because I think sometimes we have misconception. I did youth ministry years ago, back in the Stone Age. I did for 7.5 years. And we did. I mean, it was always a concern. We've always been losing some young people when they go to college.
Right.
I think, but I qualified by saying, I think it's more pronounced today. I think we're seeing more today than we used to in that. Yeah. And so that's why it's become even more of a bigger concern.
For sure.
So I don't want to make it seem like, my generation that we stayed in church, it was still a struggle, but it's much worse today.
For sure.
So sorry.
No. That's a really good point to make. Like this is not a new thing. This is not a newfound, like, what happened with millennials and we don't know what to do.
That's right.
What happens with Gen Z and they're just leaving? Well, that's not the case. It's always been the case.
That's right.
We just see it in a really strong way now. I actually listened to something yesterday. The millennial generation is the biggest generation ever to come through.
Is that right?
So you had the baby boomers, which obviously was like the biggest that anybody had ever seen.
That's what they call
it. It was
boomers,
something like 75 million people in that generation. Millennials is 80 million.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that. And maybe that's some of the numbers. I'm not 100% sure. But one of the things that we're seeing is that younger generations, like we said last week, 35 and under, millennial, Gen Z, they have this strong sense of agency about them, to where there's this independence about them, and yet they also want to feel involved. They want to feel like they have a place. And in my conversations with the students that I work with, that came up a couple of times. They talked about how it often feels like they'll come to church, but it's not their church. It's somebody else's church. It's their parents' church. And I think that's actually something we try to do a good job of here at Palmetto, is we communicate over and over again, hey, students, don't forget, this is your place too. You have a voice as well. Now, sometimes it's hard to live that out. Sometimes we do a really good job of actually verbalizing things, but putting them into practice is a challenge. Especially when we don't understand a younger generation, when we don't understand why are they doing the things that they're doing? Why'd they make that decision? So that was something that kind of came up over and over again was, they want to know that they have a place in church. And frankly, like you asked the question just a few minutes ago, like, all right, if we could get rid of all evil, what would we do? Yeah. Well, the church wants that to happen. We want to actively be involved in eradicating the world from evil in any way that we can. But sometimes we don't have all the answers. And sometimes we actually bring some of it into the world by the way that we speak to people, or the way that we talk with people, or the way that we interact with others who disagree with us, or something like that. And the younger generation will see that, and they'll start to ask questions. And if they don't like the answers that they hear, they may go somewhere else. They may go find another group that's going to do those things that they're longing for.
You know, when you say that, one of the things that I read about this generation, especially, it's true of all generations, but I think so much so of this one, they want honest answers.
Yeah.
They want to get real.
Yep.
Now, I read that word was used a lot when it comes to this generation. You know, no hypocrisy, real. They want to go deep. They want to understand.
Yeah.
And I know in some of your conversations with the students, that's one of the things they really stretch. Is going deep, being real. Real relationships, real theology, all of that. What kind of things did they share with you? I want you to talk about that for a minute, because when you told me about that earlier, it really hit me. It resonated with what I had been reading in terms of this generation.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I raised this exact question to our students over the past 3 or 4 weeks. We've kind of continued this conversation, and we've gone a little bit deeper every week. But I've raised the question about, well, what kind of conversations do they want to have? What kind of teachings do they want to have? Because one thing I hear over and over again is that they want to hear the ways that faith actually matters in the real world. They want to know that what they're doing on Sunday actually informs what they do on a Tuesday. They don't want to just feel like church is somewhere that they go. They want to feel like it's something they're a part of. So they would say, hey, we want you to teach on things like that. And one of my students, I don't remember if it was last night or if it was a week ago. We were talking about, hey, what teachings would be relevant? What teachings would be relatable for you? Because that was 2 words they kept coming back to. And when I asked that question, he just said, let's have hard conversations. He said, sometimes in church, we'll poke a conversation and we'll kind of like dip our toe in the water a little bit, but then we'll pull back, and it's like, yeah, we did what we wanted to do. We did what we could, but we don't want to stir up anything too terribly much. He said, no, push all the way through it. Like, let's be real in your terms. Let's be honest with one another, and let's actually search out how we can be the best versions of ourselves, how we can follow Jesus in this way. So what I hear from them, and what I'm assuming is going to play out, is they want to see how their faith affects politics. You know, we've got an election cycle coming up. They want to know, how does me aligning myself with the ways of Jesus inform the way that I should vote?
Right, so they're saying difficult topics then. We don't want you to shy away from that. We don't water down theology. We don't want weak theology. Strong theology, difficult topics, see it all the way through. Don't try to be politically correct. Don't try to cater to one crowd. Just really go after the theology of it.
Be loving. Be loving in the middle of it, because sometimes we shy away from being politically correct, but then we also like don't speak very loving toward one another.
That's right.
But I think what I hear from them is, let's push through. You know, I think about, we're putting together like a guys group and a girls group. They want to have real conversations. You know, anything from self-image to sexuality to my relationships with my friends. Like, how do I push through this in real ways? Don't just tell me like, oh, well, you know, you gotta love God, love people, and hope for the best. Like, no, really, let's get down to brass tacks. How would Jesus walk through this situation? How should my faith inform the way that I live? They don't want to see that faith is just something like a reason for you to fuss at somebody else. They talked about how it can be frustrating for them if they want to have a good time, if they want to express themselves in one way or another, but then they feel like they're going to get fussed at by somebody else because that's not their style, that's not their preference. Well, that just stifles them. This past Sunday, we had an instance where there was a song that we sing at church camp and at other places where there's some like hand motions to it, and you spin around and do some things like that, which at church camp is really comfortable because everybody's doing it. That's just what you do. But then you show up at church and you're like, can I do this? Like, is this okay? And they were asking me that question before church, like, hey, we're singing the song. Is it okay for me to do that?
Yeah.
And I said, be yourself.
Yeah.
Be who you are. And then we had a conversation last night and I said, you'll never guess what I heard from people this week. And they said, what? And I said, they loved it.
Yeah.
I heard multiple people say, we saw you, we saw your energy, we saw your excitement, and that makes us excited.
And that's huge. My generation dealt with that too. I can remember being in the youth group and going to camp or even VBS, going through VBS.
Yeah.
Were you able to express some emotions and excitement? But then when you were in the real service, the adult service.
You got to change.
Yeah. Check yourself.
Yeah.
Don't. And we understand you shouldn't be doing things. I mean, Jesus talked about that in the Sermon on the Mount. You don't do things just for show. You don't do it to impress others. But at the same time, if you're doing it before God, you can't judge somebody else what they're doing.
Yeah.
And a long time ago, this church, the elders decided we would allow people to express themselves in that way. And I appreciate them doing that.
Yeah.
And I just love that for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's good stuff. So no watered down theology. We want to be straight. We want to see how it affects our lives. What else did they tell you as you went through this that would help us to maintain the young people, to keep them in church?
Yeah, so a lot of what they came back to was they want us to engage, that they want us to be honest. They do want us to talk relevant. They wanted us to be relatable. They wanted us to be conversational, but they didn't want us to force it. They didn't want us to come across as pushy. They didn't want us to come across as too strong. They want to make the decision for themselves. And I think sometimes when we give people freedom to make the decision, they'll actually make the decision faster than if we push them to do it. But one thing that I've heard, not just from our students, but from other people that I've had conversations with, is this generation is more apt and more likely to express the struggles that they have with mental health than any other generation before. Okay. Even the millennial generation, even my generation, we kind of started pushing into it, but Gen Z is pushing it even further.
Why do you think that is?
I think they are more aware of some of the things that they're hearing and some of the things that they're feeling. But part of it, I think, is just because they're being given the freedom to.
Yeah.
I think for a long time it was like you better just press down whatever it is that you're feeling, whatever it is that's going on. But they're very aware of that.
And that's certainly more biblical, confessing one to another and praying one for another. I think the church has been missing that somewhat. Yeah. We have a tendency not to do that, to press down,
for sure,
to not share when we're emotionally in trouble.
Yeah.
You were talking about one of the things I read, and of course in this book, and I think you were going to even put a little.
We'll put a link in the description for sure.
Book. Yeah. It's called Growing Young, and it is a great book that I've read about how do we maintain our young people. And I know that one of the things that they said about that is this generation, more than any other generation, really wants you to be not simply accept the theology of their home church.
Yeah.
That they really want to question things. Now, every generation does that, but this generation, more than any other, they don't just accept the faith of their parents. They don't have this hand-me-down faith.
Yeah.
They have to really decide in their hearts, is what mom and dad, what they've said, what I've read in the Bible, what I've been taught, is it actually true?
Yeah.
And so giving them space to do that and giving them the tools to engage in that and decide what's really true. What do I take from my life?
Right.
And I think oftentimes we just expect our kids, our young people, to accept what they've been taught. Yeah. To just follow in our steps.
Yeah.
And that's so key.
Well, but and at some point though, the way things worked for you and I, the way we processed things, the way we understood things, it doesn't work anymore because we have new experiences and we've seen the world change and we've seen different people come up and have new ideas and things, and we have to adapt. We have to change. Now, it doesn't mean we change doctrine. It doesn't mean we change theology. Like we have our big rocks that are our focuses, but some of that other stuff, some of the things that we can have conversations about, the disputable matters, as Paul would talk about, we should have open conversations with, and we should be willing to push through.
And the church is afraid of that often because we know when we go into those difficult subjects, that we're going to have disagreements, and we don't know how to disagree well. And because we don't know how to disagree well, we shy away from those things, especially with the young people.
For sure.
Some of the issues that are out on the forefront today with our young people are very touchy issues.
True.
In terms of what our society does with them. And so we've got to be careful and be biblical about all of it, when we do. Yeah. I know one of the things that I saw is I was reading this book is that these younger generations, they want to be with a church that has a missionary heart. Yeah. And I love the way that he put that if you have a church with a strong missionary heart in looking to other cultures, other places other than our own, it really resonates, especially with the young people of today. Yeah. And so I think, in fact, at Palmetto, I think that's one of the things we do very well.
That's true.
Is we do point people toward that missionary heart. We do a lot of mission work.
Because it shows that you actually believe in what you're talking about.
That's right.
You actually want somebody else to get in on it. I mean, we do it all the time with our sports teams or with our coffee shops or with our whatever, our new device. We will get so passionate and we will get so evangelistic, if I can use that term, about whatever the thing is. And you want everybody to get in on it. You want everybody to experience it. But then with our faith, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to share that.
Yeah.
And some of it is fear. Some of it is we're afraid of, being awkward or embarrassing. But I think there also is a legitimate place to say, I'm not 100% sure if we have bought into it ourselves, if we really believe it down in our bones, so much so that it matters for some other people.
Yeah. Paul wrote, I believe, therefore I've spoken. And, when you believe, you're going to speak.
Yeah.
It's true. Let me ask you this. How much do you think parents play a role in terms of whether or not our young people come back to church and stay in church? How much do you think the example of parents and their interplay of how they talk about church at home, how they view church, how much do you think that plays into this?
I think it plays more of a role than we'd like to admit. But I think it plays a role at a time when we don't expect for it to. We sometimes buy into the idea that, you should raise your kid up from the time that they're born to the time they turn 18. And as long as you've done everything that you can during that time, then they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Well, but what happens when your kid goes away to college and then doesn't want anything to do with church for a few years?
Yeah.
I think actually that's the point where your influence as a parent is your influence as a mentor on some of these students, some of these young adults actually matters more. How do you respond when someone turns away from the thing that you want them to buy into more than anything else? Do you get angry with them? Do you pester them with questions all of the time? Do you try to force it down their throat even more? Or do you walk alongside them? Do you listen to their questions? Do you, are you open to actually hear a different point of view? Yep. Are you willing to hear the reason that they stepped away from it to begin with?
Yeah.
And what you may find is that for some of them, it was just, I was too inconvenient. I wanted to go out with my friends on a Saturday night and I just didn't want to wake up on Sunday. Well, but then by the time they had families, which is what happened with Gen X, they left church. And then when they started having families, they came back to church. And we're kind of wondering if that's going to happen with this generation as well. A lot of them are leaving, but when they come back around, we want our kids to have the same moral values that we did. So now we're going to go back to church, and we still have plenty of time to figure that out.
Well, as a parent of kids who are grown, you're really in a tough position when your kids leave home because you want them to be adults. You want them to be on their own. And yet you see some of those mistakes or maybe mistakes they're headed toward.
Right.
And you want to say something, but you also know, like you said, the more you push, if you don't do it correctly, you're going to push them away even further. So it's a balancing act there of knowing that, man, I really like to speak to my kids about this.
Of course.
But if I do, I may cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
But from my experience in ministry, I do think, and as you do, that those formative years are important.
Oh, they are.
That, if you really show them that you're living what you believe.
Yes.
I think so often what happens is that, the parents go to church, but then the kids see them during the week or at other times, they're not really living what they've been hearing.
Yeah.
Or if something comes up that easily takes them away from church, if church is an afterthought, if church is just something that we do when we occasionally have time, I think that plays a big influence.
That's a really important point. Yeah. That's really important.
Because, as followers of Jesus, I love that. I think John Mark Hicks is the one who said this one time. If we're following Jesus, one of the things Jesus did is he had that habit of going to the synagogue, as his custom, the scripture says, of going to the synagogue every week.
Yeah.
Jesus thought church was an important thing to do every week. If you're a follower of Christ, if you're following him, shouldn't we think that going to church is an important thing? Not just that you're going to check a box, but you want to be with the family of God. You want to worship, you want to grow, you want to learn. Yeah. And so how do you instill that? And some of it falls on the church, some of it falls on the parents. Doesn't some of it as well fall on the kids themselves? Can't you be the best church, the best parents, and still some you will not reach?
We all have free will. And we're not a theological conversation here, but you have the choice. You don't have to come.
Yeah.
You don't have to show up. And people make the decision not to come for a lot of different reasons. We've talked about a lot of them. For some of them, they got burned by church, so they never want to go back. For some of them, they just frankly don't buy into it. They think it's a bunch of hocus pocus. For some of them, it's inconvenient. It doesn't fit with my lifestyle right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point we all have to make the decision on whether or not we actually want it. And I think that's where it goes back to is like for somebody, if you have somebody you love who's walked away from church, you have to treat them in the way that you would want them to treat you if you were in their shoes.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to give them the space, but lovingly walk alongside them, regardless of the decisions that they make. And that's hard.
Yeah.
We deal with that. We deal with that as parents all the time.
Yeah. You love your kids. I mean, you want the best for them. Yeah, that's right. Right. Well, there was one other thing here that I saw in the book, and I know you've talked about this, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring it up again. That they want some to be a hands-on opportunity for service. In other words, not just attending church, actually ministering. In other words, making a difference in someone's life. That they want to get their hands dirty in serving people. How can we do a better job of making sure we connect our young people to ministries where they really can make a difference like that? What do we do?
This generation is incredibly entrepreneurial. They are so good at being fixers and they'll hack things together. They'll come up with solutions in ways that frankly we just can't. It's just the way that they think because they've always been conditioned to go find the answer for themselves. They now, instead of going to mom and dad to ask a question, can very easily ask Siri or Alexa or Google or whoever else, hey, what's the answer to this question?
That's scary.
And that's just, yeah, it is. But that's been the way that they've always done things. Yep. So when it comes to church, when it comes to mission work, their natural inclination is, okay, how can I make a difference here? How can I contribute? And then when the church doesn't give them the space to, well, no wonder they want to walk away. They're like, I'll go find a job that'll give me 40 hours a week to make an impact here. And I'll go work myself into the ground that way. So I think it's really, really important for us to give them those opportunities to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah. And not jobs that no one else wants. Many times the youth minister, I remember, let's get the teens to do that. It was some, benign job, something that didn't mean very much. Oh, we can get the teens to take care of that. But we're talking about meaningful service, giving them something where they feel like they're making a difference in the world. From what I read, that is one of the big keys that they will stay in a church if they feel like they're doing something meaningful, if they have purpose, and they're making a difference in the world.
Absolutely.
So it's on leadership to make sure those opportunities are there.
And it's important. It's important to understand you are dealing with people who have less experience than you. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about before, you have more experience in ministry than I've been alive. So you have a great deal of trust toward me to let me do anything for that matter. And it's the same thing with an upcoming generation. You have to understand they haven't been in it nearly as long. They might have a new perspective. They have new energy. But we have to understand that you may have to walk alongside them. And that's going to take some investment from us on our part. But when we do invest with them, when we give them some leeway, when we give them some movement, let them fail and let them fail forward. Let them fail well so that they can learn and move forward and figure out, okay, how can we do this better next time? Now, that doesn't mean that you give them opportunities that are going to set them up to fail. You don't give them opportunities where there's just no way that they could ever figure it out.
You don't prepare them.
They want to know, okay, you believe in me. You're going to walk alongside me, but you're also going to give me the freedom to do this in the way that I think is going to be best. And then celebrate them when they do. That's such a big thing. We've been talking about a lot. Like, let's celebrate the people who are doing things that we're proud of, doing things that excite us and make a difference. Like that's what we want our kids to do. That's what we want our students to do. And when they do, make a big deal out of it, because then they know, oh, now you're affirming me in what I've done. And I really know that I have a place here. Yeah,
that's right. We ought to be doing that with everybody, celebrating those successes. That's right.
Well, honestly, we could continue this conversation all day. And maybe it would be helpful for us at some point to actually bring someone in from the next generation. Now, obviously, I'm a millennial. I'm kind of right smack dab in the middle of it. Actually, now when I think about it, I'm actually kind of a younger millennial.
I'm a boomer.
But maybe it would be helpful to bring in some of our students who are kind of right there in the middle of Gen Z, who are getting started. I know we have a lot of college students here. We have a lot of young adults that are right on that cusp of leaving high school, leaving the house and kind of hitting the real world, if you will. So maybe it'd be helpful for us to kind of have some more conversations. Maybe we'll have some guests on the podcast. If that's something that you would enjoy, go ahead and put that in the comment section below, because we'd love to hear from you. And that reminds me, there are a lot of ways that you can participate, that you can connect with us through this podcast. The first, if you're listening to this on audio, is to leave us a review. This is the first time I've ever brought this up, and I can't believe I've forgotten to. If you are listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, be sure to go down and leave us a review. 5 stars would be amazing, because on podcasts, the only way that podcasts get out to other people is through reviews. It tells Apple, it tells the algorithms that go along with podcasts, oh, this is something people are enjoying. We don't always get to do that. So if you would leave us a review, would you write something that you've enjoyed, and would you leave us 5 stars? Because it would mean the world to us. If you're listening on YouTube, if you're watching this content on a video format, go ahead and drop us a question in the comment section below. If you look in the description, you'll find a link. If you have any questions for a future episode, if you'd like to submit a question for a Q&A episode that we have coming up, we would love to hear from you in that way as well. But the biggest ways that you can help us are to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've actually seen a lot of growth on that channel over the past couple of weeks. It's been really cool to see. And we really appreciate that, because it helps us get this conversation. It helps us to get this good news of Jesus to people who might never have heard of him before. And we love getting to do that. So wherever you are this week, we're praying that this has been a fun conversation for you. This has been challenging for you, and maybe it'll inspire you to pour into someone you know and you love who's in the next generation. We can't wait to see from you soon. We can't wait to continue this conversation with you. Hope you have an amazing day. Grace and peace, my friends.
God bless.